Mr. Gene Ortis.
Gene Ortis.
My father-in-law.
Your father-in-law.
Look, you've had 2 family members on. It's time for me to start getting some family on here.
And listen, you've taken some real joy in asking questions that are a little prying and about my family. So I'm really looking forward
jumping in, aren't you?
to today and to really come to you and say, listen, this is
listen.
what is my.
I just critiqued your mom's invoicing. That's all I did.
There's been a lot.
Hey,
There's been so much. So here's what I want to know. You know, I grew up as a young man always thinking, okay, like one of these days I'm going to meet a young lady, hopefully fall in love. Mm-hmm. And at some point I'm going to have to go and talk to her dad. And that's going to be really awkward for me and uncomfortable. Yeah. And I don't know what kind of person this is going to be. Is he going to be like a, like a tough guy? Is he going to, pull out the shotgun and say, well, I'm just cleaning my gun here, waiting for you to show up. Yeah. So can you break down that first initial meeting when you came in and said, hey, I'm Leighton and I'm interested in your daughter. Yeah. What was that like?
Well, the first visit, obviously I couldn't stay the night in Alexandria. And so I had to come make a day trip to Alexandria and come back. But I remember going and Laurie said, hey, I'm going to go somewhere with my mom or something. And she left me. We went to Lowe's. That's the first time I heard of the hatred towards Home Depot by Mr. Gene Ortis.
We didn't have a Home Depot.
He said, I stood there. They didn't want my business. They're never going to get it.
That's right.
Isn't that true?
That's right.
That's true. And so,
but I did relent.
But he did say, I remember he said, anybody that hurts my daughter, I'm not going to take it kindly. That's what he told me. Ooh. Then he laughed, so I don't know if he's being serious about it or not.
I was very serious.
He was serious, but I think he felt the tension. I was
right.
like, oh, okay.
It cut the tension a little bit.
Yeah.
So listen, and I gotta say, I think this is a really clever idea that you pulled out because you're walking down the aisles and he's probably going, he's listening to what you're saying. Do you know your way around a power tool?
Yeah.
Do you?
I don't think that took him very long to realize. I do most of my work behind a computer.
Are you going to be able to fix stuff when it breaks?
I don't think that took very long for him to.
You got good hands that you're out there building stuff.
Yeah, he put me on speed dial for those events.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. So, so I married his youngest daughter, and we did not have we got married right after we graduated college. Neither of us had a job. I moved to Dallas. And I have no clue. Like even now, I'm like, why did they even let us do this? But we did. Yeah, we moved there, no job, So
did you ever come into the scene and kind of say, all right, what's your plan?
Oh,
like, what are you?
Oh yeah, we had that call. We had that talk.
What was that like? Tell me about that.
Awkward. It was. We were driving. It was me and Laurie sitting in the back, and Gene and his wife Gaylyn sitting in the front, and he just said, "What's your plan?" We had been dating probably a year. I'm like, what do you mean? He's like, well, what's your plan? You're graduating. What's your plan? You got to have a plan. So I didn't have a plan, but I came up with one. And
on the spot.
Yeah. And then
wait a minute. What popped to mind?
Oh, no, I didn't come up with a plan on the spot.
You didn't have one?
No, my plan was to come up with a plan at that point. So
I'm going to be working on this. I'm going to get back to you on this plan.
I'll get back to you on this one.
Can I have another 10 days?
Yeah. And then another one was right before we got married, probably maybe a month before we got married. It was me and Laurie and Gene, and he said we had been through marriage counseling. I don't know how effective it was. That couple's not together anymore. They did our marriage counseling. So, But so he said, he said, do y'all have a plan? And we're like, what do you mean? He's like,
you've been working on it.
Who's handling the finances? And we're like, well, we don't know. We haven't discussed it.
We don't have any finances.
We don't. Yeah, exactly. How do you balance 10 cents? So anyways, but
well, I find that really interesting.
Yeah.
And I wonder because, you at that time were very young, right? Early 20s probably.
Yeah. We started dating. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So that question, and listen,
23.
I have a daughter now.
I think I was 23 and Laurie's 22 when we got married, I think.
Yeah. So I have a daughter now. I know that Leighton does as well. Yeah. And I wonder because that's a very different thing from when you're in your early 20s to say if he would have come around in his 30s, right? That do you have a plan? It's just totally different. Mm-hmm. When someone is so young like that, what were you trying to hear of? Do you have a plan? Or were you looking for somebody who's got it all sorted out? Or are you looking for somebody who might be just thinking about the right things?
I think I wanted to know, had they thought about it? I didn't care what the plan was particularly. I just thought they needed to have thought about it. You know, I'd counsel enough couples getting married. Mm-hmm. I always tell them, I want to see you twice. And I'm going to tell you, for the first time, when we meet, I'm going to try to talk both of you out of getting married. That's my whole goal. And I will be upfront with them, you know. I'm trying to talk you out of it because if I can, you don't need to get married. You know, you need to convince me and one another that you're in for the stay. And but the second time is always to go over what's the plan. This is the main reason we meet the second time as
some logistics.
Couple counseling is just what's the plan? Where are y'all going to live? Who's paying rent? Do y'all both have a place now? Who's giving up his or hers? You'll be amazed at how many couples have never thought about any of that. You know, they're more in lust than they are in love, and so they're just proceeding as their feelings are at the moment, and have never really thought about that. I don't. A guy tells me he's got a 10-year plan. I'm suspicious of him. You know, the world changes too fast to have you're fixing to get married and you got a 10-year plan?
Yeah.
You scare me.
Yeah. Well, you know, we know now, I mean, you know, adolescence for males doesn't end until your mid-20s. I mean, I was still, so I mean, that's just wild to even think about. So
yeah. So, but obviously, you heard something in the plan that made you feel like, all right, well, we'll see.
Well, he wasn't like a pushback, like just none of your business, leave me alone.
Right.
I was feeling for that. You know, I wanted to know what kind of family were we fixing to have, because he was entering into a very warm, loving, open family where we talked about things, and I didn't want, I wasn't going to be able to stop it, but I guess I was inquiring because I wanted to know what we were stepping into together. Mm-hmm. And what I found was, first of all, I loved him immediately because she loved him.
Yeah.
But you know, that's okay. You ought to love somebody your daughter loves.
Of course. You hope you do. Right?
I hope so.
Hey, if you hate him, it's bad thing. I don't guess anybody has to debate that. But, you know, I fell in love with him because she was in love with him. And then he made me love him. And so if he was just open to even discussing it with an older person that had no vote, I had no vote in whatever they were going to do. But he would talk to me about it, and we could go somewhere. You know, he could grow. He was a kid.
Right.
Oh, yeah.
And he was fixing to take my daughter off to God only knows where and do God only knows what, because he surely didn't know what he was doing. He just told you, right? He didn't have any idea. But, you know, God has a way of protecting our ignorance and loving on us and encouraging us when we maybe don't deserve it for sure, but we are open. Right. And I thought both of them were open, and they were in love, obviously. So love carries a lot of weight. Mm-hmm. And when it comes to relationship, you know, love covers a lot of sin.
Yeah.
So I saw that in them and felt it.
Yeah.
So I was okay.
Yeah.
I didn't, but I thought it was legitimate for me to ask.
Yeah.
What's your plan?
Oh yeah.
I asked people question. That today.
Oh yeah.
And I asked him when we were sitting outside, "What's the plan for this right here?" And he said,
got the same
"There
answer.
is no plan.
There's no plan.
I hadn't thought about it.
There's no plan.
I'll get back to you on that.
He did send me something from you so that we can get into later. But I love this conversation.
This is
I'm sure this is like this is getting the reels right here, buddy. This is getting the views.
Yeah.
You know, it's interesting because I think about when we got married both really young, right out of college, and you know, at that moment, typically, you know, there's an expectation of for many, for the male to be a provider, and his ability to bring resources home to protect his wife and family, right? This is a very traditional model. I know there's people who, have gone different directions, and God bless them.
Yeah.
But in that moment, I think what I think to myself is like, in that moment, I really didn't have I really didn't have a lot of resources.
Yeah.
And I didn't really know how I was going to go and acquire a lot of resources. It was just a kid who was, had some ideas and had some dreams and goals.
Yeah.
It was the same, obviously, for Leighton.
Yeah.
And you think about with your spouse, she's really just placing a really big bet on, are you going to be faithful? Are you going to be loving? Are you going to be able to, protect this family? Are you going to be able to build a life together? And so it's really a huge bet at that age. Mm-hmm. That if you're getting married at that age, you're placing a massive bet in, I think this person, will deliver these things, versus if you're in your 30s or 40s, where, these things are pretty much
Well,
set.
I think that goes back to what we've talked about too, is, the older we get in business, the less risk we take, because we know more and we have more to lose.
Yeah.
And so I think when you're that age, you're in your early 20s. I mean, you just don't know what you don't know. Mm-hmm. And, you're just like, we don't need money to live, right? Like my grandma told me, you live off of love the first year,
Right.
You don't need money.
Right.
And so, but yeah, so I mean, so I think that kind of goes through your mind too. Cause like, now knowing, 20 years down the road, I'm like, man, we should have done a lot of reading, and we should have talked about a lot of these things that we had to deal with, that we still deal with. I mean, we're still growing, right? And we're still getting to know each other, and we've been married 20 years. And so I just think that's that mindset, is that, it is a lifetime commitment no matter what. And that's and people don't make that commitment these days, right?
Right.
It is like, hey, I'm going to be committed to this long term if you do this, this, and this.
Yeah.
And that's why,
This all reminded me of me asking my wife's father for her hand in marriage. That was the terminology used back then. I'm asking for her hand in marriage. You use that. It's what I used, and a lot of people did.
Yeah.
He was out in his garden.
Okay.
And I'd already spoken to Mama, his wife, my mother-in-law, and she was excited. She was thrilled.
Now, how old were you at that time?
Oh, hey, I would be
15 and a half.
No. I was 20. I would be 21 in September, and we married in May. So I was
young. Very
I
young.
was very young.
Yeah.
And she was a year younger than me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I'm out there in his garden. He's got a sharp hoe in his hand, and I'm thinking, And I loved him. I'd been around there for about a year and a half, and so I'd been around him a lot. And he asked me. I said, Mr. Harrell, I've come to ask for Galen's hand in marriage. And he said, he didn't say anything at first, just kept hoeing around.
It's a great interview tactic, by the way. Silence.
Silence.
Let him keep talking.
He said, only one thing. Are you going to take care of my baby? And I said, yes, sir. I was kind of like him. I don't know how, but
Yeah.
I'm planning on doing that.
Yeah.
He said, well, that's good.
Yeah.
And that's the end of it. That's all he wanted to know.
Yeah.
So it was not dissimilar to me saying what you're playing.
Yeah.
It's a kind of his assurance that his little girl was going to be taken care of.
Right. And then I think that you go through the ordeal and you get married, then we feel the actual weight of it. It's like, now I have to actually fulfill what I just said.
Yeah.
And
Hey,
and that's why
to me when Galen was walking down the aisle.
Yeah.
Everybody thought it was so sweet that I cried. I was terrified
Yeah.
because it was the first moment I thought, we have to pay rent. And by the way, where is that going to be? We had already found a place. But, it just fell in on me like a ton of bricks. I cried and cried and cried while she was walking down the aisle. I don't have any memory of other than a blurry mass coming at me, her and her dad walking down the aisle. And it was just, a wake-up call. Your grandmother said you could live off of love for a year. I didn't know if we could live off of it for a week. I didn't know. You know, my dad gave me $100 that night, and he said, "This is." He had done a lot, but he gave me $100. He said, "You're going to need this." And boy, was he right.
Yeah.
He didn't explain
Yeah.
what I was going to need it for. I don't think he knew,
Well,
but he
it's
knew I
funny.
would.
It was funny on our honeymoon. You had found us a free condo. You had a friend that had a condo on the beach,
Right.
and we literally funded the trip off of the box of gifts that people put in at our reception. Like, we didn't have money. I don't know what we've done. We took leftovers from the reception that we ate on for a few days, and we literally took that box. We were counting it on the way to the beach. Like, oh, we got $600
Here's how
today.
many nights we can
yes,
stay.
yes.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
And like, it's funny is because we didn't do a lot of vacationing when I was growing up. My dad worked in a church, and so when we went out of town or on a trip, my dad was relaxing. Like, he was like burned out, and so they would just go to the Blockbuster and rent a bunch of movies for us to watch, and we just kind of stayed at the cabin or where we were at. We just watched movies. So like, me and Laurie are going on our honeymoon. I'm like, well, we don't have anything planned. I didn't know how to vacation, and so that's the first thing we did. We just went to a Blockbuster and rented.
Just started renting movies.
I'm like, that's what you do.
You could have done that at home.
Could have done that at home.
Yeah,
I
save
think
that
we went to the
$600.
beach one time and took a picture, and that's all we did on there. Yeah, so it was. Now I think I'm still perfecting it, but the art of vacationing is, I love it.
You've
So,
improved.
Yes. So how long have y'all been married?
56 years.
56 years.
56 years.
I'm still in love with her.
Yeah.
I still treat her. I still court her.
Yeah.
So I still do. Give her gifts and call her. My phone on here when I call, I have her name is Beautiful Lady. And so when she calls me, I say, "Hey, beautiful lady." And when I call her, I say the same thing, because I still think she's a beauty, and I think she needs to know it. And if I don't tell her, nobody else will. Leighton not going to tell her.
Yeah.
He still calls her Galen. I call her Beautiful Lady.
Next time she calls me, I'll answer.
Yeah, right. Yeah, you ought to do that. That'd blow her mind, wouldn't it?
So every time you pick up the phone, it's beautiful lady.
Every time. Yeah, it just rang just then. Wasn't her,
There you
but
go. Yeah, Josh, what endearments are you saying to Brooke?
So she's a little different in that way.
Okay.
She doesn't really like a lot of compliments. So
Okay.
if I say beautiful lady, I get a look like, what have you been doing?
What do you want? or
What have you
do
been
want?
doing?
What do
I
you
want to
want?
know.
What do
That's
you
right.
want? What do you
That's
want?
right. That's right. And so I'm really touched that she responds in such a way. Because
Yeah.
look, everybody's different and
Sure.
everybody.
Well, we
Sure.
have it. I'm sure that the 5 love languages wasn't even a thing when you got married. You kind of have to figure that out, right?
Right.
It's like, and that you buy gifts and it's like, hey,
Yeah.
I bought you that. Why'd you throw it away?
Right.
It's
Yeah.
like,
Well, and so
Yeah, they hadn't written that book
no,
yet.
that book wasn't around.
so 56 years.
Yep.
56 years.
56 years now. Your secret to success, because listen, we talk about the ideal will, and in business, there's this idea that the ideal will, and you're working on a complete life. So it's not just business or financial success. There's also relational and family success. So I think this is very appropriate to talk
Sure.
about. But for you, you've obviously had a very successful relationship.
Mm-hmm.
Now, you talked about the compliments that you give her, but what are some of the other things that you feel like has led to such a run of success in your relationship?
I'll tell you the number one thing, and I've counseled so many couples before they got married. I always tell them the same thing. You want to know if what are the keys to having a great relationship? And the first one is to choose well. And I know that sounds counter, because when they come to me, they've already chosen. But
Yeah.
remember, their first session with me, I'm trying to talk them out of
Yeah.
this.
Yeah.
So
If
I'm
you
saying,
choose right.
if you didn't
Yeah.
choose well, now's the time to fess
Yeah.
up and,
Well,
rearrange.
And we a couple of months ago, me and you were running some errands with my oldest with Carter in the truck, and
yeah.
you had that talk with him,
Yeah.
right? Yeah, we were he's 15, and he just
Yeah. Oh, I did. Yes.
yes,
I sure. I
and you
remember
said,
now.
hey, a lot of people make mistakes and they pick somebody because they're attracted to them or whatever it is, and that's a fleeting reason.
Well, someone told me a long time ago, you're going to marry somebody you date, so you better be careful who you date. You're liable to end up marrying them. Mm-hmm. And that was both a word of caution and a word of wisdom to me. Like, well, I maybe it's okay to date a bunch of people, but one of them is probably going to be your mate for life, and or your effort to be at life with them. So choosing well is vitally important. I mean, it's hard to choose wrong and fix it. Mm-hmm. It's just hard to do, don't you think, Leighton?
Yes. Well, that translates into business too, right?
Yeah.
I mean, hire well as well, right?
Hire well.
But for your son, now choosing well, key number one, did you go any deeper into how to make a good choice there?
Well, I know this isn't religious programming, but I am a minister, so you have to let me spill out some.
Yeah, absolutely.
I was reminding Leighton that this whole subject of doing these business principles of my dad, of course, revives in me all these memories of Dad. Yeah. And so a lot of who you hear when you hear me is just echoing what my dad whispered in my ear or shouted in my face, whatever, but put in my heart. Mm-hmm. And one of his things was, and before my dad became a Christian, he was an alcoholic, a gambler, and a womanizer, and just off the charts, wrong way kind of guy, and very, very much of a worker, but he worked for fun. That was his whole goal, was to get to fun, and for him, whatever he called fun. And but when God changed his heart, he, as my mother would often say, when God saved your dad, he saved all of him. There was no other things about it. So everything he told me about finding somebody to marry, or bumping into somebody, he said it might come. No, you don't necessarily start. Okay, today I'm going to find somebody to marry. Mm-hmm. It might fall in your lap somehow, but he said once you decide, you're deciding. Let me tell you, you can't shop for a godly wife in a bar. He said, I've been to enough bars to tell you, you can't shop. That's my dad's term now. Let's don't get into today's terminology and stuff. You asked me about my dad.
He didn't even have the internet.
No,
he didn't have the internet, so
right. Yeah. So you can't shop. That was his way of saying it. And he said, but you can at church. So he was always focusing me toward a spiritual search over a physical search. Mm-hmm. When you're selecting or you're choosing well, you should choose with the spiritual attributes first, and the physical and all of those other attachments and things, family, all of that, or next. But first was spiritual. So I believed Leighton had already found somebody spiritual when he found my daughter. So I thought he had done well on his search, but I wanted somebody who was spiritually minded and spiritually spoken. My wife doesn't mind using God's name or the scripture or something in any conversation. It doesn't bother her, and it doesn't sound out of place with her. Because it's her, it's who she is, and that was appealing to me. And she's not overly syrupy, pushy, gospel-y, but she's certainly not. She's certainly in tune with God, and that meant the world to me. Mm-hmm. Yeah. I wanted to be around somebody. I was going to be in the ministry, so if I was going to go home and have someone who didn't appreciate that, I guess you can apply that to any business. Mm-hmm. You're in the oil business and your wife hates the oil business. You come home, that's terrible.
She's driving a Tesla.
Right? Yeah. There you go. Well, that just becomes an irritant that's always there.
Yeah.
And so in the same way, for me, a minister,
Yeah.
to come home to somebody who really didn't want to go to church. You know, she always had those 3 girls ready for church. Well, and I went way early before they did, and they always sat there, all 4 of them right there at the front. Galen and the 3 girls, and I. Those days, you sat on the platform with the pastor, so that's what I did. But I was looking straight at them, so they wouldn't move. But all of that just to say that there was a harmony at a spiritual level between myself and my wife, beautiful lady, and she complimented me, and I think I complimented her. She's the smartest person I know. Ask him. When we do Trivial Pursuit, who's the smartest person?
She knows it
by
all.
far.
Crazy.
Yeah, we do a family trophy deal. Who wins Trivial Pursuit every Christmas and
we have to keep them up late and distract them with kids. That's the only way we have a chance.
Yeah,
you know.
But and listen, the 3 girls are smart. Don't get me wrong, but she definitely. So I'm always saying that about her, and I believe it. You know, I'm going to say good things about her. I can't stand being around guys who put their wife down in public. They should never do it, but they shouldn't do it in public. You know, just simple, flippant little things she never does. You know, in front of a bunch of people. That's terrible. That's poison. That's like pouring, ink in your ice water. You don't. Not a very good.
And it goes
taste.
both ways too, right?
Yeah.
I mean, because man, I've heard wives talk about their husbands, and I'm just like,
I should have clarified that. Yeah.
That would.
There are guys
I was
that
like,
are trampled by their
Yes.
spouses. Yeah. But anyway, you were. I think I was trying to answer some specific.
Well, you said harmony, the word harmony, right? And I think that's a big thing, right? Is it's this alignment on the things you value.
Yeah.
And for you valued spirituality, and I'm sure there was talks about, do you want a family? Do you want kids?
All that.
Are you okay with moving a bunch of times, right? I mean, like, there's just things that, like,
I don't think we ever got to that one. That one just fell in on it. I wasn't smart enough to figure that out.
Yeah.
Well, I thought everything was permanent. My dad, I was raised in one town, never moved.
Yeah.
We did move across town, but I was 4 years old when that happened. So, I only knew one house.
I do.
A lot of things to me were jaded, I guess you'd say, because I saw everything as permanent.
Yeah.
So marriage for life, well, certainly. I wouldn't have questioned that at all. And I haven't.
Yeah.
But I've learned that that's not the way of today's world, or a lot of my even contemporaries never looked at life that way. So somehow I guess my dad forged that in me, Leighton. I don't know. I don't know that you're born with that, but I certainly have felt that things are permanent.
Yeah.
And
I think there are a lot of things that are tangible memories that you can remember, a conversation or an instance where something clicked or someone instilled something in you. And then there are these intangible things where, like, even now I'll do something or say something and I don't remember how I learned how to deal with that, but I can say, that is an attribute that I picked up from Gene or from my dad or from whoever influenced me, right? And so you can kind of see where it came from, but you can't pinpoint where it came from, right?
Exactly.
And, and so that's
the principles I want to talk about. Y'all asked me to come prepared to talk about today. My dad never wrote those down.
Yeah.
My dad never said them out loud, like the following 7 principles you need to have in your life.
Yeah.
No, my dad lived those out. I observed them. We would talk about them. Everything we're going to talk about, I'm going to tell you, my dad talked with me about them. But he was dying, and this was 2 days before he died, Leighton, that I took the list that I sent you guys to his bedside. Now, he was alert, and it wasn't like he was, I was just waking him out of a slumber. But he had congestive heart failure, and 2 days later, he died. And so I'm at his hospital bed, and I've been there for days, and we've talked about everything. I've thanked him for everything I could remember that he had ever done for me or provided or given over to me. And I said, Dad, I wrote them down, these principles. I think that you taught me. And so I got his glasses, and he read those 7 things. And he said, with tears in his eyes, he said, I always hoped you were listening to me.
That's awesome.
And I'm sorry.
No, you're good.
That's all good.
It's it was a sweet time, and memory I'll have all my life is him affirming things he taught me,
Yeah.
but that I had caught.
Yeah.
He used to say, when people you often catch more
Yes.
than you.
It's called not taught.
Yeah. Okay. Well,
Yeah.
you observe. I can't tell about anybody else. I observed in my dad every day. I went to work with him every day, 6 days a week, and went to church with him on Sunday. So I was with my dad 7 days a week.
Yeah.
At some point, I had school, but I went to work before school and after school, which was not a treasure. It was a treasure to me. It was not a burden. I could have told my dad any day, I don't want to go today, and he would have said, okay. But I wanted to. I wanted to be with him.
Yeah.
But anyway, he was a great guy. But
Can I stop here and
Sure.
fill in some gaps?
sure, please do.
Let's give. I want to get back to your dad and start from the beginning of that and talk about your childhood and working through those businesses. But you, the majority of your working career, I would say, was working in a church, right?
Absolutely.
And you were what was your title at Calvary?
Minister of Education.
Minister of Education. And you were there for
31
years. You
years.
started. I think, if I'm right, you moved and took that position when my wife Laurie was 6 months old.
Yes. I carried her in the church. She was just a little baby.
She was 6 months old.
6 months old. She was
And
born
then-
December. We were started there July 1st.
And you were there for 31 years.
31 years.
And Minister of Education, but obviously, I mean, I know from knowing you and seeing you work at the church, it was way more than just education, right?
Well,
I mean,
at first it was actually titled Minister of Education and Administration. So I did
Yes.
all the business affairs of the church
Yes.
for my first 17 years there, and was Minister of Education.
And I think that's what a lot of people don't know, because we are a business podcast, but even a nonprofit and churches have to be ran like a business.
Absolutely.
Right? I mean,
you
and
better.
So, yeah, you better. And so in your time there was tremendous growth, right?
Yeah.
Because there's different measurements we use to know if we're successful in business. A lot of times it's revenue or profit or percentages. For a church, it is more of growth, right? There's your salvations or spiritual steps. Attendance is one of those, right? And so what was over that 31 years, y'all went, how would you explain the growth?
All right. Well, during those 31 years, we had 3 censuses in Alexandria and the United States. And each of those, our population went down for all 3 of those. One of those included the closing of the England Air Force Base, which our church on that one week, it was 7 days. On one Sunday, we had so many people in Bible study. The next Sunday, we had 200 less. They had all moved out of
Air
town.
Force, a lot of Air
from
Force.
the Air Force, every one of them. That number just disappeared.
Yep.
Even though we had the reduction in the city, our church, when I went there, we had 438 in Bible study. When I left, we were right at 2,000. And so we saw that kind of growth in it's 31 years.
Sure.
I didn't, believe me, if somebody says, Brother Gene did that, no. I was just glad to be there.
Sure.
And I did everything I could, but I wouldn't say I had a miracle plan.
Yep.
Back to plans. I had lots of plans, Leighton. Lots of.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness!
Yeah.
I looked one time when I retired. Had this stack of 3-ring binders of plans that they would go to the ceiling in here twice. Just little binders that I planned, and we led the church to do all kinds of things. And so I did the church saw growth even though the city was declining. The area had enlarged a little bit, not much. We consider Central Louisiana to be about a population of 128,000 people.
Okay.
And when I got there, it was probably 125,000.
Okay.
So it's not,
Yeah.
it's dying and
Sure.
coming and going and everything is, but the city of Alexandria's population went from, I believe we were probably at 80,000 when I first got there, and it's 55 right now. So, it's what it is. And a big part of that was the removal of England Air Force Base, because it's right there in Ellick, and it was very active.
Which now is an airport, international airport, which is amazing.
It is.
The last 2 times me and Laurie flew were out of there because we come drop we found a good system. Okay, we come drop the grandkids off at their house,
Which the door is always
fly out of Alexandria because it's a pretty nice airport.
It is
cheaper than Shreveport.
Nice airport.
Never had a delayed flight. Pretty great. Dude, you park. I thought I was parking in illegally because you park 20 feet from the door. It's amazing.
You just get out of the car
right?
into the plane.
Yes, it's just amazing.
Yeah.
Fly out of there, but it cuts down on us having to fly into Shreveport or Dallas and then have to drive and pick up the kids. And so it was great. So I don't know why we didn't think of that earlier. But anyways, I've complimented that airport so much over the past 3 or 4 months because
they took they put a board together once the announcement was made, which it was not long from the announcement to the removal of that air base. They did those pretty quick because the government didn't want storming the banks. Immediately they put together a team to refashion the air base. It was, I don't remember if it's given to the city. I don't remember all the government, how we got control over it, or if we really do, maybe one of those loose ties still. But anyway, there is a England Authority, it's called, and they have worked heroically to bring, we have Northwestern State University has an annex there. We have lots of businesses in all what used to be barracks or places to park airplanes. What do you call them? Hangars.
Yep.
That have become businesses. And one of the our airport used to be in Pineville, and they moved it to England Air Base, and now it's the Alexandria
International
Airport.
Yeah.
It is. It is fine.
It's awesome. Yeah.
It's very fine. And the brickways to drive up to it. Have you ever noticed how smooth they are?
Yeah, it's
Wonderful.
great.
Beautiful.
And,
I can highly applaud that.
Yes. So you did that, but you also have an entrepreneurial spirit, and we're going to get into that. A lot of that probably came from your dad, but you've owned storage units, rent houses, flipped houses. Yeah. One of your biggest passions is woodworking.
Right.
You've made furniture. Half the furniture in my house he made. In fact, you two met because we were right. This is great timing. Right when you retired, me and Laurie were in the middle of trying to remodel a 150-year-old house, and we had no clue what we're doing. We had contractors walking off on the jobs. We were way over budget. We didn't have the money to finish it, and Gene said, well, I'm retired. I'm going to come up there. You pay for my help, and I'm going to oversee the project getting done. And he did.
I did.
And he lived in our mother-in-law suite.
Yeah.
And that's something we'll always remember, but and be thankful for that you did that for us. But just that house particular had all of your craftsmanship in it. You really did a lot to it. But yeah, we do. We still have dressers, our kids, our toy, beds, toy boxes, whatever you've built over the years. And so
I enjoy it.
Yeah. And so, but so you do have a very strong business sense. In fact, I remember when you retired, you had businesses reaching out to you. Hey, please come run our company.
Yeah.
I
had a business, a printing company.
Yeah.
That came to me and asked me to buy them, and I did.
Yeah.
And so I owned it for a short time. I told them, I said, look, if I wanted a job, I had the best job in North America. And I retired from it. I don't want to have to be here at 8 in the morning or 7 or whatever it was.
Yeah.
And so I said, I'm going to give this back to y'all. So we undid everything.
Yeah.
It was a friendly deal.
Yeah.
So They're still in business.
Yeah, and so, but this, a lot of this, like we talked about, it came from, or we're going to get into, came from the principles your dad instilled in you, and that's what I'm trying to think of the first time that was ever shared to me. Maybe because you've spoken at several of my businesses before. And have given a lot of talks. In fact, every year we do awards at Berkshire Hathaway. Gene's our keynote speaker.
Oh, wow.
Yes, yes. That's how he funds his retirement now.
Yeah, right.
They
pay me almost enough for my gas to get here.
There you go.
There you go. And some food.
Yeah.
Well, yeah.
There you go. There you go. But no, it is, and what I love about it is for that company, it's probably our most attended event, out of 140 agents, and we'll have a lot of people there. And it's really the feedback, and my perception is that's a lot of the people in that room is they're only, you're not giving a sermon, but you are tying biblical principles into business. And that is probably the only spiritual talk they hear all year. And it's been crazy. And so I've had agents reach out to me and like, hey, your father-in-law, what's his name? I'm in crisis. And they almost view you
I've had
as
some of your people call me.
Yeah. And so that's pretty crazy. But, it's even my business partner, Adam, says he's like, the best business book, and you might have said it too, but it's like the best business book is the Bible, right? And so that's always kind of even in business is bringing principles into there. So let's talk about your dad. You got into it a little bit.
Well, in fact, we're about to roll on 45. So
hey, well, I will say Grayson, our youngest listener, Grayson Stockton, did tell me at church Sunday, hey, why are these an hour long? And I said, well, what do they need to be? He said, 40 minutes. And I told him he could speed up the playback. Hey, you can make this 10 minutes if you wanted to, buddy.
I think Grayson's spot on. So we're right there.
Well,
so
let's go. You want to go
how about
an
a big
hour?
cliffhanger?
Okay. You want a cliffhanger?
Cliffhanger is how did you all let him know when Lori was expecting her first child? That's going to be how we kick off the next.
Is that how we're going to kick it off?
Next episode. That's the big cliffhanger.
Well, then we're going to get into the 7 business principles, which are great.
That's right.
Okay. How did we tell him? Yeah, I'll have to think about that because I'm not sure. So
I don't remember that.
Okay. Well,
coming soon.
All right. So next episode.
All right.